Today, I want to talk about using Dr. Sebi's alkaline food list as a guide to urban gardening, but not just urban gardening. We're talking about urban survival gardening. Remember, you can grow for the beauty of it, you can grow for the health of it, or you can grow for the survival of it. But let's say you're just growing for the beauty of it. Those beautiful plants can also be part of your health garden, health food garden. They can also be part of your vegetable survival garden. It just depends on the plant you're growing. If you're growing for the health of it, same thing. Some of the plants that you're growing for the health of it will also double as survival crops, right? And some of them are quite beautiful as well. All right, so I compiled a list here based on Dr. Sebi's alkaline food list. But of course, I grow for the survival of it. So the list that I have as far as survival crops goes is far more extensive than the list that you see here. But today we're talking about growing for the health of it and growing based on Dr. Sebi's alkaline food list. Now you may say, I know that avocado was on Dr. Sebi's list. How come you don't have that on there, Doc? I noticed that some other things that grow in South America, that grow in the Caribbean, that grow in South Florida, South Texas, Southern California, and South Africa, or southern regions of Africa. I noticed they're not on this list. Well, because I don't live in Africa, I don't live in the Caribbean, I don't live in South America, South Florida, South Texas, or Southern California. I live in the Mid-Atlantic region in the D.C. area. Some people live in New York, Detroit, Chicago, they live in areas like that. So, of course, there are going to be many of those foods that Dr. Sebi approves of that are not going to be on this list. But this is not just an alkaline food chart, but it's also a survival alkaline food chart. So what can you grow for survival purposes that align with Dr. Sebi's alkaline food list? Alright, so we're going to start with our vegetables. I have callaloo on here, but I probably should take the callaloo off because it is a native of Jamaica, and again, we don't live in Jamaica, but I put it on there. It is a type of spinach, but it's not the spinach that you're accustomed to. So that I'm going to take off the list. Okay? Now, the next thing that we have on the vegetable list is dandelion greens. Now that we're going to keep. And why is it on my survival chart? Because dandelion greens grow themselves. The only thing you need to do to grow dandelion greens is stop killing it. I know that someone said that growing lawns, and has convinced most Americans and others that follow the American model that growing lawns is more important than growing medicinal weeds, than growing vegetables, fruits, what have you. Okay? Not the case. Dandelion greens is on Dr. Sebi's alkaline food list. It grows itself. Just get out the way and let it do its thing. The more comes up, the better. Now, I will say that if you're growing dandelion greens in a toxic environment, don't eat them. Alright, so you want to make sure the environment is a clean environment for the dandelion greens to grow in, because that root is going to go down into the ground. It has a large taproot, and it's going to pull up the nutrients. So if you got a lot of toxins in the earth, which is the life giver, you can't eat dandelion greens. Alright, so just make sure your environment is safe and not so toxic. The next item on the list is kale. Now, I'm a survival gardener, so I also grow collards, but collards are not on Dr. Sebi's alkaline food list. So this is based on his list. Kale is on here because kale grows 12 months out of the year. You can grow it year round. Okay. Leaf lettuce also you can pretty much grow year round as long as the conditions are right. Alright? In the summertime, you want to make sure you're growing your leaf lettuce in a shaded area. Alright, not full shade, but majority shade. Because in the heat of the sun, this loose leaf lettuce will bolt and go to seed, which is not a problem, but then you'll have seed to grow again. I always say let your vegetables self-seed. So they're going to continue to grow themselves. And my leaf lettuce does just that. It self-seeds and grows itself. So that's another reason why it's on my survival list. The one that that goes along with Dr. Sebi's Alkaline food list. The next item, onions. Onions are on here because onions can grow pretty much year round. I had my onions growing under blizzard. Okay, so the onions survive 12 months. You can eat the tops and you can eat the root, of course. Turnip greens. Now this is one of my favorite survival crops because turnip greens are fast growing. They go to seed, you can collect the seed. Those seeds are very viable. You can just throw the seed on the ground. Trust me, just throw the seed on the ground and they'll come up. You can grow them in less than 30 days. So it's one of those items that you absolutely have to have on your survival garden list. Alright, now that looks like it's a short list, but again, I don't live in Africa. I don't live in the Caribbean. I don't live in South America. I don't live in South Miami or South Florida. I don't live in South Texas or Southern California. So I have to go based on where I live. Again, we're not just talking about alkaline foods, but we're talking about survival foods. Alright, the next category that we're going to talk about is fruits. Now right off the bat, I know many of you are looking on this list and you're saying, I don't see avocados. What's going on, Doku? Again, if you don't live in an area in which you can grow the foods that are on that list, then you can't consider that a survival crop. Alright? You can consider it a crop that you're going to eat for the health of it, but definitely not for the survival of it. So if you don't see it on here, then you're not going to be able to survive off of it unless you live in a region that it grows freely. Alright? So the very top of the list, my favorite, we have blackberries. Blackberries grow easily. They're perennial. They'll come back year after year. You can eat the berries and you can use the leaves. Okay? Blueberries, another perennial. They'll come back year after year. Grapes and figs, I don't grow them myself, but I have friends that grow grapes and figs, and they live in the area in which I live, so I know that you can grow them easily. Raspberries and strawberries, same as blackberries and blueberries, they will grow themselves. Strawberries, in fact, grows like a weed, and so do these other berries. Well, blackberries in particular grows like a weed. Alright, and it'll spread itself, and you'll see it coming up all over the yard once you get it in there. So some people don't want that many blackberries. They don't want it taken over, because it can take over if you allow it, just leave it alone. It can take over. And so can strawberries. They can take over. A little slower than blackberries, but definitely they will spread. Now you see cherry tomatoes on here. Cherry tomatoes are on here because they are another plant that self-seeds. In fact, all, I'm going to say natural plants can self-seed. They go to fruit. That's what the fruit is for. You may think the fruit is for you to eat it, but the plant produces the fruit so that it can reproduce itself. So the cherry tomato drops the tomatoes. The tomatoes harden off, of course, in the winter, and then they start to thaw in the early spring, and you'll see some cherry tomato shoots coming up, knowing that you didn't plant them. Cherry tomatoes self-seed. We also got cucumbers on this list. I put cucumbers on here because they're not really a perennial like the rest of these, but once you get them established, they will put off quite a bit of cucumbers. So for a good 2 months, you'll be harvesting cucumbers. You'll harvest so much cucumbers that you'll get tired of them. Now with the cherry tomatoes and the cucumbers, you can actually preserve them so you can eat them, even though you're only growing them a few months. You can eat them year round if you preserve them. Cucumbers, I know that I'm not going to get into preserves right now. We're just going to talk about what you can grow. Alright, as far as spices go, we got basil on the list, and some people may question why I have basil on here, because you know that basil is a summer crop. But basil also sells seeds. And I learned through my experience that if you just leave it alone, much like the cherry tomatoes, the basil seeds will drop, and as long as the conditions remain the same, the basil will come up. Self-seeding. Oregano, same dip. And I've been able to grow oregano 12 months out of the year with a slight cover in my mini greenhouse. Parsley, I've done the same thing, let that grow. And it grew through the winter under a little bit of protection. But then I had some more parsley up on the hill that was unprotected. It survived the blizzard. Now I couldn't eat it during the winter, but it regrew in the spring and summer. It went to seed, it dropped its seed, now it's growing again. So I gotta make sure I go out there and harvest the seed so I can actually spread the seed in other areas that I want parsley, but parsley belongs on this list as well as a survival crop. Thyme, you can grow that year round. Sage, you can grow that year round. Now as far as your drinks go, I know the list is small, but again, we're talking about what you can grow in the area in which you live relatively easy. And this is what I've had success in growing. The chamomile, the ginger, and the raspberry tea. Alright. Now, of course, we grow much more than this. Again, my survival crop list is much more extensive than this, but we're going based on Dr. Sebi's alkaline food list. So I hope this has been helpful. This has been Dr. Peace.